Great defeaters, new and old. Welcome back to what's probably going to be a very, very jam-packed episode of the breakdown. But you've got the right people for the job here. Your host, BaseDaKID, Tony, the pugilist boy. We are the children of the game. Now, before we start anything, manners and respect. Tony, how are you? How was your weekend, and are you excited for the show?
Yes, sir, and yes, sir. So I was excited for the weekend's boxing action, and I'll be honest with you, I felt like that was a great show. There were enough what I would call one-sided fights, but they all came with a tinge of danger. A couple of them were pretty much what we expected. But I have to say, overall, the entertainment value was well and truly merited. And can I say, hats off, salute to His Eminence Sheikh Turkey Al Sheikh, because he delivered.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, funny enough. So there was actually only three one-sided fights, and I guess two of them people felt yeah they would have been, and one of them, even though it was one-sided, it was still mildly competitive to a degree.
Mm,
So you can kind of say, all right, you give it grace, but overall there was enough 50-50 slash 60-40, 65-35 type fights where there, you had enough there to justify both the pay-per-view, the spectacle, and everything in general. It was a really, really stacked card, and unfortunately, except for possibly the 17th of February and maybe the 9th of March, if a card does actually take place there, we won't see a stacked card like that for the whole of 2024, or I guess until maybe the next Riyadh season, because the money that went into that, it's not going to happen anywhere. But if we can get enough 50-50 matchups like we've been having throughout the year, then yes, we will all be in for a very prosperous 2024. But with that being said, and a big up to the chat. First in the building was man like Philip Answer. I saw you when I created the stream, Philip. So thank you very much for being in attendance from early. Alexander the Great, big up to you, tuning in all the way from the US. I think you're on the East Coast, so it's probably about 5 o'clock over there right now. Hope you finish work. If you are working, and hope you're good. Dan the man, as always, hardest working guy on X, Mr. SC15 himself, just down the road. Big up to you. Man like Jam Down 187, as you always say, manners and respect. Salute to you every single time. J Lanks, big up to you. Guzzy, I've not don't think I've seen you in the chat before, but peace be with you, brother. Thank you very much for joining in. Always love a new subscriber. Thank you very much. Ivy Ben, bless ups to you, and thank you for the comment on my last video that you just put on there. Uh, it's appreciated. Dr. Wolf tickets in the building, and Obafemi Alabi as well. Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining in. Um, so Tony, answer Philip's question.
Philip, my Christmas was very good. I enjoyed it with my family. As you do with this time of year, there's a lot of get-togethers where you meet up with your boys, you meet up with your friends, you meet up with your family, and really, the spirit of Christmas could not be better for me. I'm really blessed to have my family around me at this time. Hopefully, you guys will be the same. How are you, Base?
Right, well, I was the complete opposite of Tony because I spent the entirety of my Christmas in bed, being very anti, but I enjoyed every moment of it. Apart from going to get food when I needed to do that, I was either sleeping or I was on the PS5. I was reading some self-help books. I was playing some games on my phone, and just plotting out what I was gonna do for the for this week's content coming up. So yeah, like I won't. Mine was very much insular, but I needed it. It's been one of those periods of time. So big ups to Jimbo Jones. Well done on picking Parker Bay. So thank you very much. When it comes to like the big cars, I usually get the big ones, right? It's the it's the ones where it's like they're the middling ones or the you don't really think about them predictions that I usually fail on. But congrats, Jonah 31. Thank you very much. And also I think it was you, Jonah, that gave me the super chat on the live stream for Day of Reckoning over the weekend. I missed it in the moment, but I think it was you. And if it was, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, you probably seen my name on other boxing chats news, right? Okay. Well, please make sure you come back. Oh, Untraceables in the building. No reason to be sorry. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Okay, now we've got all the pleasantries out of the way. Right, so we're gonna kick it off. We're gonna start Day of Reckoning, and I guess it makes perfect sense to let's start with Anthony Joshua because there's a lot less dialogue I feel like that probably needs to come from that conversation as opposed to the other one. Um, so yeah, kick it off with Anthony Joshua. I will start off with this one. Um, right, so first things first, Anthony Joshua's third fight of the year, and ultimately it was his best performance to date so far this year. He's had some good performances. Like I didn't mind the Franklin performance. There was some hesitation in there, but ultimately he controlled the majority. Seemed a bit uncomfortable under pressure, but in the when we had the fight that took place against Hellenius, I understood there being a bit more of a cautiousness there, as in even though Hellenius is no great shakes. It's an opponent that you literally drafted in on like 5 days' notice. So it's understandable to not necessarily look your best, but he got the highlight reel knockout that he needed, and we move into Day of Reckoning. Now, the first thing is, I was never in any doubt that Anthony Joshua would win this fight, despite all the talk from Otto Wallin. And Otto's talk became less and less from the first press conference down to when he was actually in Saudi. He kept alluding to there's a lot more work has gone in to a lot more work has gone into the this fight week and this fight promotion than he's used to. He said that on a couple of occasions, which made me say, okay, so his mind might be a bit frazzled there. He kept banking on AJ being mentally weak, but it looked like his confidence started to dwindle the closer the fight got to. And ultimately, if you watched any of the content Anthony Joshua put out prior to the event, one of the first things he said, especially to Laura Woods, was, "I'm excited for this fight." And when she asked him, "What are you most excited about?" he said, "The punches I can land." So bear in mind, this is a guy that he's fought in the amateurs on two separate occasions. This is also a guy that he's done numerous rounds of sparring with back in 2016. I think he was very, very confident, and there's been numerous times he's asked for the Wallin fight. So you can tell to him, this was almost like a layup for him, and he took it as such. Everything from the first round, the movement, the way he was stalking, he was inching forward. He wasn't lunging into range, but he had the reach over Wallins. Every time Wallin was trying to probe and keep his lead hand out there to sort of try and distract AJ was just going over the top. He was just shooting his jab over the top of Wallin's jab. And Wallin quickly realized that he can't stay on the outside because AJ's just got too much of a reach. But he isn't strong enough to hold his feet, because when he was doing that, AJ was slamming that right hand right into the gut. And Wallin didn't like those ones either. So he was constantly being backed up, even though he tried to sort of hold center ring. And at that point, that's where you started to see the even more of the confidence and the gusto just start to drain from him. And if it's like a battery, like that battery just started to wilt down gradually, rounds 1, 2, 3, all the way until we got to like the fourth round. Now, there was a couple times when Otto did manage to land some interesting counters, or like to come over the top of Joshua, or Joshua would lunge in and Otto might catch him sort of coming in, but it would be a grazing shot, or Joshua would be able to partially block it, because he's still not fully committing himself to like staying in range. Like there'll be several times you would have seen he was throwing a shot, and as soon as he threw that shot, he jumped or he backed straight back out, not in a straight line, but he made sure he got himself off center line. But that still, but it was still just him being responsible while applying steady pressure. And then, he wasn't giving Otto the opportunity to maybe catch him or to have a break to try and reassess how things are gonna go. And then ultimately we get to round 5. He was throwing the 1-2, but he started to throw the hook behind the 1-2. It'd normally be a jab up top, punch to the body, big hook up top, and that's ultimately the combination that sent Otto Wallin just careening into the ropes. And at that point, we saw Otto started, his shape started to come apart, started to capitulate a little bit, but he managed to see through the rounds. We see the nose start to get busted up, the eye got a little bit split as well. Yeah, everything just started going downhill at that moment. And then ultimately, as far as the corner was concerned, that was all she wrote. Broken nose, busted up eye. There's no real chance you're about to get back into this, and you just been beat up for 5 rounds. He was pulled out. Anthony Joshua takes the victory and takes the night as well. Especially with all the talk of the Wilder thing and whether or not Wilder was going to be the next fight, and AJ having pressure for Wilder, who's going to steal the show prior to, and all this stuff. AJ basically silenced every narrative that came up. Congratulations to him, and we look forward to seeing what happens next year moving forward. So Tony, what was your take?
So not very dissimilar to yours, Base. Again, reiterating your words, I thought it was a very good performance by AJ. I think that, a lot of questions were asked prior to this fight. There were the doubters who thought, has AJ lost that killer instinct? Sort of plodding towards a victory over Robert Helenius in the previous fight, getting taken to the wire with Jermaine Franklin. So I kind of was like happy to see this version of AJ, but there are still questions for me. A lot of people are saying AJ's back. I see G Chain, who was a massive fan of AJ, is in the house. Big up to yourself, G Chain. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas to you and your family, bro. But I'm not going to jump too overboard in saying AJ is back. Because to me, I was screaming at the TV. I was with my family. There was a lot of us in attendance watching the whole event from top to bottom. And during the fight, at least, I like that we saw what we saw in rounds 1 and 2. Because it was a cautious yet probing AJ. So he was clearly under instruction. He followed his instruction very well from Ben Davidson. Go out, establish the jab, take center stage, take the middle of the ring and try to dominate from there. I liked what I saw. What I didn't see was round 3 and 4, a step up where I expected him to be, okay, I've now established that I can get to the range that I require. And the way you've got the range is you're using that jab and the backhand is coming beautifully right into the pit of the stomach of Otto Wallin. And it's at this point that I'm saying, right, now you've established that punch. The next punch is, and this is what I would be saying in the corner, you've shown that you can get that right hand right in the pit of his stomach. The left hook is there. You just need to throw it. It cannot miss. Because effectively, if my right hand is in your stomach, I must be in range for a left hook. And so that's what I was thinking was missing. It was a situation where I could see that AJ had now established that good ability to move his feet, which I thought was a big problem in the Helenius fight. In the Helenius fight, I know he's fighting a much taller foe, but for me, one of the issues was his footwork, where he was throwing punches from too far out. And if there's any correction that was required, and I have to give praise to Ben Davidson, because obviously AJ under Derek James, we weren't seeing this, was the movement of the feet into the range and offloading 1-2 shots. Obviously later on, 1-2-3 became something that was seen, but it came a little too late for me. I thought that should have been apparent from round 3 at the very latest. You know, I could understand if in round 1 and 2 you're a little bit cautious and you're trying to set a trap, you're trying to see the reactions of a fighter when you throw that punch to the body. But by round 3, I believe he had significant dominance to be able to say, you know what, I can now throw the left hook. And even if you're missing, you're out of range when you come back with the hook and you come back because you stand up. When you throw the hook, you know, he's there, hook, and then you're back into your stance. Yeah, there, hook, and then you're back into your stance. So he's in a position to throw that shot. And then if he doesn't throw, if he misses, you then go, okay, what can I make by way of correction here? You know, do I throw that right and make a never step in to be able to connect the left hook? Is he expecting the hook and firing back? Then you make adjustments. So rounds 3 and 4, although they were good rounds for Joshua, what I felt was missing was the third punch, because it was quite often that I saw, you know, jab, jab right, jab, jab right, hook. But there wasn't that, okay, let me put my feet in position and throw the 3-4 punch combination. And that's where I feel like AJ of old would have been that guy. You know, the AJ that beat Dillian White, you know, was a 3-4 punch combination puncher. I was screaming at the TV, throw the left hook, throw the left hook. You're in range, throw the left hook. And guess what? The punch that wobbled Wallin was a right and a left hook. And the left hook was beautifully timed, caught Wallin flush on the chin. And it was at that point you were like, damn, he's in trouble. The whole body just solidified. And it was like, yeah, now he's felt that punch. We're hopefully going to see more of it. And that's when you expect him to step in, and he does. He starts to work body and head, and effectively puts the fight out of Otto Wallin over the next 3 minutes and forces the stoppage. But yeah, a good performance by AJ. I have to give G-Chain his props, because G-Chain gave us hell about, Ben Davidson is now the new trainer. And we were saying, no, it's, you know, watch, it's still just, you know, Derek James. And we still don't 100% know it's not Derek James. But we do know Ben has worked extensively in this camp with Anthony. It seems to have worked. And, you know, maybe he says to himself, right, this is my guy going forward. The instructions seem to be clearer in this fight than they were under Derek James. So, you know, this could be the match made in heaven. And especially if, you know, we do see a Tyson Fury matchup where obviously that intel that Ben has on Fury would be priceless for Anthony. So, yeah, good fight.
Hold on. Now, no. You one thing, and I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to cook on this a little bit, because since we're bringing outside factors into the show. So, how much credit are we giving G-Chain? Because what he actually said to us was that he's the new trainer, right? And we was all told that he's working with him like for this camp, or he works with him while he's around in London, etc., right? But G-Train was the same person who was basically saying it stinks. Remember, that wasn't his exact words. It stinks blood. I like what? Why is he with Ben Davison for? I mean, he wasn't saying, oh yeah, this could be a good matchup. He was just saying, oh, look, he's trained trainers again. That's what he was saying, right?
Yeah.
So
True.
So while he did, obviously, he kind of spotted it initially that he was gonna be the coach for the fight. He did do that. So salute to him for that. But you can't give him props for saying, oh yeah, that he called it, because he was poo-pooing the idea. And now he's saying AJ's back. So yeah, like we're not gonna do the I'm here for receipts. He likes to have receipts, I like to have receipts as well. And I've got a platform to do it. So shout out to G Chain, but you're not getting all hella praise on that one. Cool. Carry on with what you were saying.
I'm done.
Oh, you're done. All right. Yeah. Cool. Oh, you see, look, If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stick with Ben for now. That's not what you were saying prior to Saturday, was it? Calm. Right. Anyway, okay. So let's. Oh, before anything, fight fan, Danny. Salute to you. Well, I did see when you came in, but we was in mid flow. So, but we have to give manners and respect. Oh, and Ross Mason as well. I don't think AJ deserves to be forgiven for how he behaved
Rosie.
in the ring after Usyk 2. He'll do it again next time he gets beaten, and do we really want to see it? I mean, if he does, maybe that's just the passion. But fair enough, Ross. I appreciate it.
It's Rosie. It's Rosie. It's not
No,
Ross. It's Rosie.
it's Ross. Don't you not remember last time he said
Oh,
his
my
name's
bad.
not Rosie? It's
Oh,
a man. His
okay.
name's Ross.
Sorry.
You see,
My bad,
I've got
Ross.
memory. You stay
Good.
quiet.
Yeah, yeah, I'm old, man. Listen, the old dementia's kicking in. But
All
Ross,
right.
I mean, I'm look, in the annals of history, we have seen
Oh,
breakdowns in
fuck's sake.
rings over and over again. Look, it's just one of them things that happens in boxing. I've seen women come in the ring and clout the referee with their shoe over their sons. I've seen punchers, boxers get up off the floor completely unaware of what they're doing and knock out the referee. So there's nothing unusual in boxing. This is a sport with passion, as Base says. If a guy loses his shit and ends up saying the wrong things, hell, that's part of the game. We're here for it. We like the serious side. We like when people go into a fight professionally and act with great respect to one another, i.e. Inoue and Tapales. But we also like the trash. We like Jarrell Miller. He's great fun to watch. So we have to accept that boxing has many sides, and that we have to accept that, sometimes we get robberies and sometimes we get great decisions. Sometimes we get stupidness in the ring, and sometimes, it's all part and parcel of the game. Enjoy it.
Okay. Right. So, with that out of the way, let's just double check to see if there's any other. Uh, no, seems pretty cool for the minute. Okay. So, with that one, we're gonna move on to another fight on the card, and I think for this one, we might as well get this one out of the way because it was probably one of the more one-sided fights, but it was just good to see this person back in the ring. So ultimately, Dmitry Bivol versus Lyndon Arthur. Tony, let us know how you kind of saw this one and what was your takeaways from it.
Okay, so Lyndon Arthur was very much the big underdog in this fight. Dmitry Bivol has been out of the ring for a significant portion. So, look, we've seen Dmitry Bivol dominate one of what was considered the pound for pound best fighter in the world in Canelo Alvarez at the time. And so there was no reason to believe that Lyndon Arthur, despite being an IBO world champion, would give any trouble to Dmitry Bivol. But one of the things that we must consider is Dmitry Bivol is not a concussive KO artist. He can stop people by accumulation of punches, but he's not what you would consider a one-punch knockout artist. He's a very accurate, correct boxer. He throws punches the right way. He's and ultimately a great technician. Great footwork, good angles, good punch selection. In this situation, we saw from early doors that, again, first couple of rounds, nothing was unexpected. We don't expect fireworks in the first couple of rounds because neither fighter is really a puncher. So we expect there to be a little bit of a chess match. And as such, there wasn't too much action in the first couple of rounds. But what we saw into round 3 and 4, and again, this is where you expect to see people moving closer, people trying to see how they can now change the narrative of a fight, see if they can impose themselves on their opponent, is we saw a much more defensive-minded Lyndon Arthur than rounds 1 and 2. Round 1 and 2, he was kind of squaring up. He was, trying to give his jab, trying to, chess match Bivol in a lance sort of situation with their jabs. But, and the commentators were saying, Lyndon Arthur's got a great jab and, You know, if there's one thing that he's got, you know, is that jab. And unfortunately for us, we didn't really see that great jab, you know. And in all honesty, I actually question how great his jab really is. I mean, yeah, it looked good against Anthony Yarde in a fight that was Anthony Yarde's possibly one of his worst performances. But ultimately, is Lyndon Arthur's jab really that good? So in rounds 3 and 4, we get to start seeing Bivol start to up the pace, throwing larger volume of punches, you know, stepping in. And there were certain flurries where, you know, he'd throw 3, 4 punches, 4, 5 punches. And, you know, Lyndon Arthur clearly was in defensive mode, whereby he was using his hands and very, very cleverly looking at everything that Bivol was throwing and counter it with defensive movements. So actually, although Bivol unleashed a larger volume of punches, I think the percentage of punches that were actually landing flush kind of goes down. But because now Arthur's in that mode where he's now not throwing throwing punches at all, you know, in any numbers, and Bivol is the one who's throwing punches, the rounds are easy. That, you know, it's literally a case of repeat, 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 repeat through all 12 rounds. We now see, you know, that dominance of Dmitry Bivol just going into the center ring, backing Lyndon Arthur into the ropes, and then shooting a jab, and then following up with a combination punches, picking body and head nicely. You know, he was trying to break down Lyndon Arthur, but to Lyndon's credit, you know, the defense was good. When he did get clocked with really good shots flush on the chin, he was very strong in being able to take those shots. Obviously, he wasn't able to do that against Anthony Yarde. So that goes to show that, you know, Bivol clearly doesn't throw punches nearly as hard as Anthony Yarde does. But having said that, you know, credit to Lyndon. The fight, as I said, pretty much was one-way traffic through the next rounds. And the judges' scorecard showed that, you know, it was one-way traffic for the entire fight. There was no way, you know, that this fight was going to be anything other than a 120 to 108 type scenario. So yeah, good to see Bivol back. To me, it's a comeback fight where, you know, he gets rounds in, he gets to let his hands go. There's nothing coming back at him, which causes him undue concern. So it was a comfortable fight. He's probably had some rounds in sparring, which would be just as tough, possibly even harder. But, you know, I'm glad to say that at the end of the fight, when he was interviewed, he did mention that this next coming year, he will be looking for the unification match against Otto BaseDaKID. So, you know, let's hope we get that match. Over to you, Base.
Okay, so a couple retorts before I get into my sort of assessment. Every time that Bivol has had a knockout, the majority of those knockouts have been just one punch KOs. So the notion he doesn't have power is very sort of flawed. Now, one thing I will say.
No, I'm not going to say he doesn't have power, but he's not coming out and in one round, boom, knocking a guy out.
No, but I didn't say he was a one round KO guy. That's facts. But
Floyd's got KOs. He's not a one punch.
No. What I said was the majority of the KOs he does have came from one punch shots. They weren't accumulation, because you said he got his stoppages by accumulation. That's okay. Not correct.
That's a difference. There's a difference. There's a difference between a stoppage where you just punch somebody and the referee steps in and says no more.
And that wasn't none of his.
You're flat on the floor.
Yeah, now, that's how his KOs happen.
So okay, you can do that, but with Dmitry Bivol, what I'm trying to indicate is that he's knocking you the hell out all over the place, and then eventually, through accumulation of punches, you go down. It's not like boom, and then it's that. It's more accumulation. He's wearing you down.
Go and watch his previous fights. Go watch the fights where he gets the knockouts, and you tell me if that's the case. Now, let me finish what I was saying. So the point I was trying to make was um when it comes to him, what he isn't, he's not, because he's not an aggressive fighter. He won't push for it. So even if he's got you hurt, unless you are totally like arms down by your side, like you've got nothing to offer back, he's not gonna take the chance to get after you like someone like a Beterbiev would, like Anthony Yard would, or those type of guys. Purely because and this all stems from his Joe Smith Jr. fight. Ever since that fight where he got caught and he got hurt very badly, rocked at the end. I think it was the seventh round of that fight. It was the sixth or the seventh. Um, he didn't obviously like the feel of that. Ever since that fight, he never committed to shots because prior to that fight, he was going after people, but he never really wanted to. After that, he's like, okay, there's no reason for me to take chances and take risks when I can just outbox these guys. So while I agree that, I'm not saying he's a like a super one punch KO artist. That's not the case at all. But he if he's got someone that's walking forward, the punches hurt a lot. So I did see some people in the comments saying things like, "Oh, like he won't have enough power to keep Beterbiev off of him." The way Beterbiev fights, if he walks forward onto one of those shots, don't be surprised if he hits the ground because it's happened to him before. Now, with regards to this fight, Tony, if you're closing the camera, turn off the mic because I can hear everything, please. Thank you. So, with regards to this fight, the first thing you notice, Dmitry Bivol, against he went on the front foot against Lyndon Arthur. He was backing Lyndon Arthur up from the first round, the first moment, very similar to how he was backing up Zerdo Ramirez last year. And with that front foot pressure, Lyndon Arthur just was backing up onto the ropes. He fought an extremely negative fight. And purely, I think a lot of that was about making sure that he can basically get through this fight and get through the rounds. I don't necessarily believe that he I think the fact that he had what should we say? The fact that he pretty much had the uh 6 weeks notice. It wasn't the greatest of ways to prepare for this, coming off of the injury that he potentially had as well. A lot of things just kind of, so it looked like very much he went in there to kind of to survive, to maybe just do what he can. But as soon as he kind of threw a couple hands and realized that he was getting countered to those, he sort of just tucked up, went into survival mode. And as soon as he kind of done that, um, Bivol, while he was able to sort of tee off on him a little bit, because he's backing up, he's taking a little of something off of each punch that he's throwing. So when he's taking something off the punches, like he's able to take them. And as they always say, it's very hard to knock someone out who doesn't want to be knocked out, who's just coming to survive. Like the way that you normally get those knockouts is by allowing someone to open up. As soon as they open up, you either catch them in between their shots or you find your openings because they're in a more aggressive stance than normal. Now, Linda never gave us that throughout the entire fight, apart from possibly, I think, round 10 and then round 12, right at the end, just before the second salvo came in from Bivol after he sort of punched himself out on the first one. All of that to be said, like, Lyndon did well trying to sort of exchange jabs with him, but ultimately, Bivol's jab just ended up reaching the target before Lyndon's jab reached the target. That was pretty much happening on a fairly consistent basis. The combinations were sort of working better with Bivol. The one thing I will say is he's very fleet-footed and he does dart in and out. But the one thing because he throws a lot of straight punches, he doesn't throw, I believe, enough hooks or enough sort of short arm shots from alternative angles. So everything is very sort of centered on front on and straight. So if you've got your wits about you, you normally are able to slip and ride some of those shots because they're coming straight at you. It's a lot easier to avoid them as opposed to someone like Beterbiev who will get in on the inside, hit you with a short left, short uppercut like to the side, and you never know where the punches are coming from, and he'll split the angle and do the same thing. So that's one thing where the two of them do differ in that way. But Dimitri's in and out style means that he's always at the end of your range, but you're never at the end of his. And I think that's where he's able to fluster and bamboozle so many of his opponents. Now, yeah, it was a short notice fight for both guys. Sort of, and Dmitry did say at the end, he wasn't sure of his powers, so he didn't want to like throw everything he had at the fight. And obviously he was talking about his stamina when he said that. Also, let's not forget he was coming off a bit of a hand surgery as well. So he didn't really want to force the pace, even though had he have maybe stepped on the gas from round 5, there's more of a chance that he would have got the stoppage, because obviously he did knock Lyndon down. And unlike what Tony said earlier, it wasn't the headshots that knocked Arthur down against Yard. It was more the body work. It was the body work that seemed to do more of the damage. It was just a cuffing shot over the top as he was going down, which kind of allowed all of that to transpire. But yeah, look, ultimately it was a good performance. Dmitry is starting to look a bit more like a pressuring pure boxer, and if he's able to maybe get some of that killer instinct back, which maybe it's just not there anymore, especially after again what happened with the Joe Smith Jr. fight. If he can get a little bit of that, or he can fight people that are gonna actually come and throw their hands, I think we'll see a lot more conclusive victories from him, not just points. But when you outbox people like 10, when you outbox people 12 rounds out of 12 for the majority of your career, sometimes it gets hard to move out of that mindset. But anything to contribute more to that one?
No, that's clear and concise. We've chewed the cud on that, so let's move on.
Man's making cow references. All right,
it's a phraseology, my friend. Chew the cud just means
I know what it means. I know what it means, but a cud is obviously from a cow.
No, it's a phraseology meaning that we've discussed the subject at great length. Yeah, that's what it means. It's nothing to do with cows. Yeah, it means we've extinguished
Tony, go into the dictionary and I'll see what a cud is and see if it don't come from a cow. Yes, but
it's a phraseology. Yeah, it's like holy smoke. It's not really literally holy smoke. It's a metaphoric. We chewed the cud.
It don't sound any better when you say it a second time.
Go on, Daddy. Teach this heathen, yeah? Biblical terms, yeah, brother.
I don't know who you was pointing at, but it weren't me. Anyway, right, let's see. Okay, so from that, let's quickly have a chat through the fights which I'm not gonna talk about. I don't know if you're going to. I just want to say, so congratulations to Jaya Patel, Frank Sanchez, and Filip Hrgovic. Commiserations to Elizoro, Junior Farr, and Mark Demore. That's sort of my takes on it. Jai, looking forward to your next devastation, your next fight, and we'll see if maybe we'll try and get Jai on this show at some point and see if he's willing to come on the breakdown, have a chat with us. But good things in his future. Hopefully, you can get a shot at the WBC title next, but not sure how that one goes. You got anything to contribute to those particular fights there?
So let me think. Frank Sanchez, limited opponent, but did what he had to do. The Frank Sanchez discussion, I think next year is going to be very interesting. I think the heavyweight division right now is in a good place. It's in a sweet spot because potentially next year there are some amazing matchups. And Frank Sanchez has got to be in one of them. Despite not having had the most sort of headline type grabbing career, he's been in a lot of conversations, but hasn't had that big fight, that coming out party type fight. But next year, the heavyweight divisions for me is going to be definitely something that could produce some classics. And Frank Sanchez is one of those fighters that you go, he could be in one of those classics if pitched up against, you know, Daniel Dubois, for instance. Jael Pataya, yeah, as you said, did what he had to do. Amazing knockout. You know, look, we've had some great knockouts this year, and Jai has delivered one of them. You know, punch perfect against Ellis Zorro. Who's the other fight? Hergovich. You know what's really funny is when I was looking at the pre-fight press conference where they had all the fighters stacked up, one lined up, and you look at the size of Filip Hergovich, and you cannot help but think he's a big guy. And obviously, he's positioned himself to be the IBF #1 ranked fighter and the automatic mandatory for that particular belt. So it means that his next fight is huge. You know, who it's going to be, we don't know. But it will be a career-defining fight for him. You know, I thought the fight against her, Zhile Zhang was a big fight. He got the decision. And let's not keep going on and on and on again about robbery. Filip Hergovich is no scrub. He's a competent fighter. He's doing what he's asked to do. He's going out there and he's beating the people that are put in front of him, even if they are scrubs like Mark Demori. But, you know, next year, as I said, I look forward to seeing what Filip Hergovich does because he has had some excuses for some poor performances, but he's serviceable. I think that's it. Am I right, Base?
Yeah, one sec. Hot video. Why didn't Lyndon go for Bivol? Sport pretty much answered what I said. I think he thought that he might have been playing possum to get him to come in and open up. But it did look like a legit good body shot. And if I was Lyndon at that particular moment, you go for broke. You try. Obviously, I know he doesn't want a medical suspension, so he doesn't want to risk getting knocked out. But you try and go for it. Now, someone in the chat, let me just double check who it was. Going back to that fight very quickly, said, where was it? Oh, Philip. He said Bivol should have fought Vosdik rather than Arthur, and I agree with you. That would have been a great fight, but maybe Vosdik #1 wouldn't have been ready in 6 weeks' time. Bear in mind, he's also only had 2 comeback fights since his 3.5 years out of the ring. Also, Dmitry Bivol said Lyndon Arthur for him was the best possible opponent at this moment. So that either means he was the best opponent they could get, or because he said that he's tired of not being able to fight for other belts, he wanted another belt. And whether we like the IB or whether we rate it or not, it's all of the big champions always seem to still take the IBO belt and put it on their mantle as well, along with the rest of them. They may not want it as the only belt they have, but they like it as a nice little accompanying trinket. And he said, look, I finally get a chance to fight for a belt. I want the guy who's got the belt. He's got a belt. I want to take it. Devin Haney said a similar thing when he was at 135 at one point. So that's one reason why you choose Lyndon Arthur over Vosdik.
So, Ivy Ben, just to answer your question, I do think Filip Hergovich has a chance against AJ. I think it is a very good matchup between their two styles. I would favor, I probably am biased when I say I favor AJ, but I do think it's an interesting fight.
Okay. Alex says, I think Hergovich is a level below elite. That's why he's only fought one tough fight, Big Bang Zhang, and a bunch of cream puffs to pad that record. I mean, it's a very hard argument to dispute. So you might quite be right there. I mean, I definitely don't put him in the elite category, but he is probably upper world. He's in the world stage somewhere. Let's see. If Bivol was hurt like that against anyone else, and he would be in big trouble. Well, it depends. I mean, if he was as hurt as we think, would he have been competent enough to get away from it? We don't know. Um, but he's been hurt before. He's been badly rocked in fights before, and he gets through that. So I guess it's just about the level of the opposition, or how good they are at closing the show. Fight fan, it's better for Bivol. The IBO is a half decent bargaining chip to add to your world titles, as now it's 3 belts versus 2 belts. Exactly. Um, Jimbo Hergovich is a very dirty fighter. Yep, we're not even going to go into that. I've already called him the rabbit punch specialist. That's his name from now until eternity. But let's move on to one of the other fights of the card. And thank you, Alex, for even bringing up his name, because that's what we're going to talk about next. Kabayel. So Arslanbek Makhmudov versus Agit Kabayel. This is one of the clearest upsets on the card. And to give props to Fight Fan himself, he did call that he did predict Kabayel to win this. He predicted him to win it on points. I don't think anyone saw him KOing Makhmudov, especially inside 4 rounds. You'd think maybe you might get to like round 6, 7, or 8 before he starts to tire the way he did. But yeah, this was a very excellent performance from Kabayel. Essentially, the first round, you had Arslanbek Makhmudov. Basically, at this point, he was coming forward thinking he's just going to sort of throw big shots. So Kabayel came in with the high defense. He decided to test the power initially on the first couple shots just to see what they was like, dip under some of them. He even stepped into a couple to sort of limit the amount of trajectory they had. But primarily, he was using his feet, moving around, making Makhmudov have to move, because we all know the one thing Makhmudov doesn't like and doesn't have is good movement. He's got no lateral movement. He does just walk forward in straight lines, and a lot of the opponents he's had are very much tailor made to that. Even the ones that have some movement, they still move in more linear ways. So with regards to that, you see, when you had someone that was able to move laterally and to be able to move to the side as you're trying to throw the shot, you had Makhmudov throwing off range or not being able to set his feet, having to try and turn and adjust, and he just didn't have the speed or the dexterity or the agility or fluidity of movement to be able to keep up. As we get into after those first 2 rounds, you see Agit Kabayel sort of stab to the body a few times, step up for some moments here and there. Ultimately, at that point, I think at that point he felt, okay, I can actually, the power's there, but I can take it. So that's when he started actually stepping into his shots, um, stepping behind the shots. And at that point, he was really starting to dig to the body, and he was even beating Makhmudov, who had the longer reach. He was beating him to the punch on the inside, because obviously Makhmudov's arms have a lot longer to travel than Agit Kabayel's do. And at that point, we saw round 3 came in, where he's there. You just still start working the body. You saw Makhmudov was extremely tired from round 2, and at that point, you see him just, yeah, he just started flustering himself. He was almost like he was panicking. At that point, he just started to try and swing and wing wild shots in, hoping that one would land. There's a couple times where even some did, but I think again, Kabayel was just sort of riding those shots. He was just getting in on the inside. Yeah, broke him down, wore him out into the end of the 3rd round, where Makhmudov then had to take the knee. He then came out in the 4th round, and I think he thought, okay, I'm going to go for broke. But at this point, you could see that Makhmudov just didn't even have the energy or the anything else to be able to even swing those punches. A lot of it was a big arm shots. A lot of it was just sort of almost throwing his body and hoping it will connect. But because he's having to turn his whole body in, because he doesn't have the energy to actually just snap the punches out, he's still getting beaten to the punch. And at that point, you see again, more body shots, more body shots, more body shots. He goes down again, but he gets up, and then he goes down again, and he gets up. But then by the 4th time the 3rd time in that round, he goes down. The referee has to wave it off. Makhmudov at that point, there's no point carrying on, and it is what it is for him. Agit Kabayel proves that all the promise that he had back in 2017 with Derek Chisora wasn't all hype. There's enough about him that he can actually get to a, sort of that he can get to a decent enough level. I think right at this point he has to be considered top 10, if not top 10, definitely sort of upper top 15, depending on who you would want to put before him. Makhmudov was very highly rated in WBC rankings, so I would expect Kabayel to now take over that rating or go quite close to it. And we'll see basically what's next for both of them moving forward. But yeah, Tony, what's your thoughts?
So, as you said, great shout out by Danny Fight Fan. And to be honest, I did kind of listen to Danny on that one, thinking, you know what Danny was saying made sense. The thing that I've always thought about Makhmudov is he's a gym rat in the wrong part of the gym. To me, he just looks like Ivan Drago, where he's just someone's putting something in his system and his muscles are growing at an exponential rate. And you can see that the musculature is so great that it's got him to do this all the time. Yeah. You noticed it. I noticed it from way back, but he's always literally, he cannot stand still because the muscles are now so thick in his body that literally, he's like all the time, the neck is turning. And what kind of came to mind was, yeah, this is Ivan Drago, isn't it? This guy is just a machine. He's built hard. He throws hard punches. He doesn't feather any of his punches lightly. It's all about, let me just take you out with my big punches, and everything I hit you with is gonna hurt you. If I hurt you on the elbows and the ribs, in the stomach, in the face, on the top of the head, it's just gonna hurt. Sporty Sports says, is Makhmudov another Pricey? Definitely not, because the difference is David Price was an elite boxer. Yeah? Makhmudov has never shown boxing capabilities anywhere close to what Pricey had. Yeah? Pricey clearly has chin issues, where in this case, Makhmudov up to now has shown no fallibility with his chin. But what he did show in clear daylight on Saturday night was, I have no engine. There's Base will probably hammer me for this one, but to me, two guys just totally are not ready for 10 to 12 round fights. Makhmudov, Jarrell, Big Baby Miller. Two guys that are massive. To me, I've never seen them fight 12 rounds or 10 rounds and go all 10 rounds at a decent rate. They're always going to drop off, pick up, drop off, pick up, drop off, pick up. So, everything you said in terms of the technical breakdown of the fight, Base was absolutely bang on. I have to give great credit to Agit Kabayel. Let's not forget, this guy is no scrub. 23-0 coming into this fight. He's a big guy. He's 6'3". So he's not a scrub. He's not like, people who know boxing will know Agit Kabayel has his share of decent fights, decent wins, KOs. So he should have been a red flag to anybody. But it was clear that, he looked at fights at Makhmudov and he went, I'm just going to keep moving around his shots. And that just wore out to me, Makhmudov. And I see people writing about possible broken hand by Makhmudov. That doesn't account for the drop-off in pace. If I break one hand, I still have another hand. It was clear Makhmudov at 4 rounds in is completely spent, and Agit just has to come in and finish him off, and he does it with great aplomb. In the way a fight of his pedigree, with the record that he has, you think, well, boy, this guy is there for the taking. He's run out of energy. He's easy to hit because he's got no great defense at all. And Agit just comes in and pieces him up nicely with great shot selection. So a very entertaining fight as long as it lasted. You know, it was right out until you see this guy start to flake and then take advantage. Great fight.
Okay, so with that being said, let's move on to what is one of the other big four fights of the card. Mr. Daniel Dynamite Dubois, dangerous. Danny's got a girlfriend, whatever we're going to call him at this point. Dubois versus Big Baby, Big Gravy, CVS, Big Farmer, whatever words and names we've got for him, Jarrell Miller.
Okay, so sorry, Base, to interrupt you, but I have to use the name that Fight Fan Danny came up with, the man of 1,000 names, Danny Glover, Sexual Chocolate, you name it. He came up with some names for Triple D yesterday, and I was like laughing my socks off. But actually, the Dancing Destroyer, Dynamite, Deptford Zone, Daniel Dubois, to give him his full name.
Oh, it's actually Daniel Deptford Dynamite Daddy Dubois. That's
yeah, that's it. There we go. There we go.
I mean, you stopped me mid-sentence to get it wrong. I mean, that's shocking, Tony. Come on.
Come on, give a guy a chance.
Right. So where was we? Oh yeah. So actually, because you was in mid-flow and obviously you started talking about Jarrell and Makhmudov not being able to go at pace and whatnot. Take it away. Let us know your thoughts on this fight.
All right. So this was definitely one of the most entertaining fights of the weekend. A fight that was preempted really by the massive mouth of Jarrell Miller making all kind of protestations prior to the fight taking place, attacking literally anybody and everybody everywhere in Saudi. So, he was talking it up, calling out, AJ, calling out, all and sundry. And that made the fight very interesting. The one thing that we noticed on the scales was the enormous size difference between Big Baby Miller and Daniel Dubois. Big Baby came in at 333 pounds. He looked huge when he was stood next to Daniel, 100 pounds lighter. And effectively, it started maybe for some, it certainly did start for me to think, God, that's a lot of man to beat. And I suddenly thought to myself, how much punch power does Daniel Dubois carry to dissuade a juggernaut? I'm using Joe Joyce's name, but this guy is like an 18-wheel tank. And it's funny because during the fight, I referenced that several times because Big Baby started off like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be close to you. You're not going to be bouncing around here because I'm going to just keep tapping you up. Every time you shoot, I'm going to shoot. And it seemed to be a timing thing where early doors in this fight, Jarrell was able to be effective by timing Daniel. Anytime Daniel would throw shot, Big Baby would throw shots at the same time or very slightly after. And so whenever Daniel Dubois was hitting, Jarrell was always catching him with something. Daniel might catch him with two, but Jarrell would catch him with one. And it was a significant one. Obviously, Daniel, being the smaller guy, was in this fight to go in and out, do some work, move around, do some work, move around. He was trying to establish his jab. But as I said, every time he initiated any action, Big Baby had the antidote in that he would just throw hands right at the optimum point because he's looking at the shoulder movement and going, okay, I see it, boom, take that as well. Yeah. A move, boom, take that right while you're coming in with your 1-2. And he showed that, you know what, I've got something about me. Early rounds, you're beginning to look at this, rounds 1 to 4, none of those rounds to me were dominated by either fighter. I wasn't exactly scoring it because I'm just looking at the dynamic and thinking, okay, Baby's touching him up, but Daniel is doing what Daniel does. He works well. He works to instruction. Very similar to the performance against Usyk in that, there's a regular volume of punches coming out each round. He's initiating action first. He's trying to be on the front foot. But as I said, Baby Miller just seems to know that, every time you throw, I'm going to catch you with something. And at points, he catches Daniel with some really hard shots. But Daniel, strong fella, he rides through those shots and he resets himself. This is the nice thing about what Daniel was able to do. He was able to use his footwork effectively so that whenever he was caught in on the ropes and taking shots from Big Baby, he'd move around or he'd hold up until he could get the opportunity to move around and reset. Clearly, the instructions from Don Charles were working well in that respect. Now, coming into round 5 or 6, what I suddenly realized is Baby Miller, his output drops. His output drops. And Daniel is effectively able to come out in round 5 and 6 and dominate. But now we have an issue because Daniel comes out, dominates for 2 minutes. But the last minute of those rounds now, Daniel is to me, he's blown out. He's like, I'm coming out. I'm working, using the jab nicely, the 1-2. Again, in the same way that I was shouting at AJ, I was shouting at Daniel, put the 3-4 punch combinations together. And he didn't want to do that. He seemed to be reticent to throw more than 2 shots. It's just constantly 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. The occasional 1-2-3, the occasional hook, the occasional uppercut. But most of the time, all I'm seeing is 1-2. And to me, that is the undoing of fighters like Daniel, where you need to start throwing 3 or 4 punches, occasionally at least, so that you can, put your opponent more on his back foot. And he just seemed to be happy to just throw the 1-2. But he kept doing and working well behind that 1-2 for the first 2 minutes of the round. Then into the 3rd minute, the output just went, that's it. I'm just going to see the round out. So he's moving around, but he's not throwing any punches. And this is now where Big Baby steps in because he's like, okay, so now you're not going to throw shots. I'm just going to tap you. Boom, boom, bam. Yeah, boom. Yeah, step in, do a little bit of movement, bam. There's an uppercut. And then you see, like, Daniel is physically hurt by some of Baby Miller's shots. But the issue is they're only in the last minute of each round. And so the rounds are being won by Daniel Dubois on 2 minutes of work, but he's letting Jarrell Miller into this fight by allowing him to hit him with nothing coming back in the 3rd minute of each round. And we're seeing this going on through 5, 6, 7. By round 8 now, Jarrell Miller's output is really diminished now. I mean, he literally can only fight for 1 minute of a round. Every punch that you look at him throwing, he's actually putting no body movement into a shot. There's no rotation going on. There's no dips. There's nothing coming out except arm punches. And those arm punches, to me, they might be heavy because he's got big ass arms, but they're not telling punches because, to me, now Daniel is getting into his ascendancy because now he's thinking, well, hang on a second. The punches that I was receiving up until now had a little bit of weight to them, but now they're just taps and, arm shots where they're not generating enough power. And so Daniel's now able to take complete control of this fight through 8, 9, 10 and effectively, just make Baby Miller look bad because he's able to pick his shots more wisely because he's now aware that, I can actually pick harder shots because what's coming back isn't hurtful. And he decides, and he's now stepping in and he's giving Baby Miller some hard shots. His volume is still lowering. He's also beginning to diminish in volume, but he's just working more. And I'm now thinking, you know what? If Daniel steps up the rate, he might take Baby Miller out. And I kept shouting at the TV, come on, Daniel, step in. Get 3-4 punches and you will take him out. And lo and behold, when he steps in, he finally starts making Baby Miller hurt. And you see Baby Miller, he can't defend. He can't even hold his hands up to defend. He's literally, the hands are there, but anything Dynamite Daniel Dubois throws goes through his guard, because the guard becomes ineffective. You know, holding hands there, and your hands are literally getting pushed out the way, and the punch is hitting you in the face. It's all over for me. It's just a matter of time now before the stoppage comes. And lo and behold, last round, you know, Daniel bites down on his gumshoe and lays it all out, and he gets the stoppage. Great performance by Daniel. It's a good fight for him, a good win for him. It's a great win for him, actually. But I don't want to put too much credence in, you know, oh, now we're going to see this all singing, all dancing, great elite fighter in Daniel Dubois. Because the issues are this. He still had numerous rounds where he flaked after 2 minutes. Yeah? And really and truly, how good is Jarrell Big Baby Miller? Because to me, in the same way that people will now go, oh, Deontay Wilder's legacy doesn't look that great. Well, Jarrell Miller's resume doesn't look that great now. Over to you, my friend.
Okay. Let's maybe I'm gonna ignore the resume thing for the moment. Because I guess the difference between Jarrell and Deontay is that Jarrell isn't a champion and hasn't had title opportunities. So maybe his resume is allowed to not be as good. And no one, I guess, is comparing it to like a, you know, a world level resume. What I will say, and obviously you spoke quite detailed there, so I won't go over too much, but I was concerned for Daniel after the first couple of rounds, because obviously he's boxing and moving, which is the right thing, sort of box and move, but then he's never been great on the back foot, but he was getting backed up. And rather than just, you know, throwing out the jab and just trying to use it to ward Miller off, he started then stepping in and trying to clinch and hold him and trying to work, not even just work on the inside, but he was just trying to hold on the inside. Miller was obviously walking forward to try and grab him and hold him. That's his game plan. And Daniel, for me, was playing into that. And as a lot of us saw, first 2 rounds, he's breathing quite heavy, breathing out of his mouth in the first couple of rounds. And I'm like, this ain't good, because if you're there trying to, I know that you're a very strong young man, but you're there trying to wrestle off this big 330 odd pound guy. Sooner or later, you're gonna tire yourself out, especially if you're throwing the big shots. And for those first 2 rounds, Jerome Miller wasn't breathing heavy. He looked very calm and composed. And I think the change that happened between the two is Daniel stopped trying to throw heavy shots. He was just starting to throw more, not arm punches, but he was throwing you know, more sort of more pity pat. I just want to sort of touch you with the shot, touch you with the jab, touch you with the hand, and then maybe mixing a hard shot in there here and there. But where the fight changed is that Jerome Miller, when he started to now try and actually initiate his own attack. So in the first couple of rounds, he's throwing a couple small body shots, a couple little jabs, but not really doing too much. In the third round, you see him actually start to spring and jump at Daniel and like sort of jump into range to actually move his frame. And when he's starting to move his frame and now he's actually throwing much bigger shots, this is where his gas tank now starts to rapidly deplete, because in the third round, he starts breathing quite heavy. The fourth round, okay, it's a bit heavier, but the fifth round, obviously, at the end of the fifth is where you're like, oof, like he's properly gasping for air, and you're like, oh, okay, so now he's exerted a lot of effort, he's exerted a lot of energy, and at that moment, I think Daniel was seeing that and realized, okay, I wasn't throwing the hardest of punches, but now, I mean, my weight and my strength is kind of comparable to his at this point. But even though I'm tired, he looks like he's going to crash a lot quicker than I am. So I think at that moment, Daniel found his second wind, and that's where he was able to then start stepping it up, using more footwork and more movement to make Jarrell have to keep walking towards him and not just being able to sit in a pocket and fight and hold and grab a rest that way. And that was where Daniel ultimately just started banking those rounds, winning those rounds. And then at that particular moment, you see that yeah, then he started just throwing a little bit more behind the shots every now and then, because now the shots are landing. Even though they was landing before, now they're really landing flush. The arms have started to drop, the head starting to lean forward. So he was putting a little bit extra mustard and ketchup on those shots. And then yeah, at the end of it, he just started, he started pounding Jerome Miller's head like burger meat. And it was, yeah, the referee was right to stop it, but 8 seconds to go, you're like, oh, is he gonna allow it to see the final? But he's like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, he's taken some hard shots. Yeah, he did slip a couple of them as well, but Daniel wasn't gonna stop for the next 8 seconds. He was gonna find energy from somewhere. And um I do want to give Jerome Miller credit for the chin and the punch resistance. Clearly, you can tell that his punch resistance is totally connected to his gas tank. Some people just have poor chins. His chin and his I guess his overall resistance to the punches just is determined in how much of energy he's got left. Because yeah, they was if I reckon if he was still fairly fresh in the eighth round, then he would have seen the final bell, and maybe he would have pressed on, because he did try to press on a little bit in that temp, but he just didn't have anything left. So yeah,
Can I
overall,
can I just say, I think there's a metric that you can say that once your energy levels are depleting, your punch resistance also goes the same way. So your ability to take punches in round 10 are way less than they are in round 1 generally.
of course, that's correct. But I was just talking in terms of with him, the difference. If he still had the energy, his chin is there. His chin solid because he never went down at any point, so he's good at obviously protecting himself in that way. But yeah, I'm saying we've got some people just have very poor chins, but his one is definitely connected to the amount of energy he's got to carry on going. But yeah, great performance by Daniel. He came through the fire on numerous occasions in that fight. He showed us something, and as I said in another stream the other day, I don't know what the girl there Sugar done to him, but she's turned him from Pinocchio to Yu-Gi-Oh because he's got the powers now, and long may it continue. So yeah, big ups to Dubois.
I'm
And we
gonna
move on.
send you a yellow card, mate. That was a low blow. That was a
How?
foot in the air tackle, bro. You didn't need to
How?
go there. I'm not
That's the
happy
truth.
with that. I'm not
That's the
happy.
truth. She turned him
No,
from
man.
Pinocchio to she turned him into a real
You?
boy.
Oh,
He
come
he,
on,
he
man.
became a real boy overnight. He had everyone was questioning the heart. He was wooden before. They said he was wooden. Now he's a fully fledged human being. Yes,
Oh, what are you
that's what we
like,
want.
bro?
She gave him the powers. Man's Yu-Gi-Oh now. That's his new name. Daniel Yu-Gi-Oh Dubois.
Oh,
But
you're just
yes.
bringing the tone of the show down, bro. What's wrong with you?
How? How?
Leave the man's sex life out of the equation, man. Mickey in Rocky said, women weaken legs.
Yeah,
Yeah?
well, she strengthened his. Him get the powers now. That's all I know.
uh,
Anyway, big ups to Daniel. Right now, moving on to the last fight we'll talk about on that card, which is
no, no,
Deontay.
no. Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
no. Oh,
No, sorry. I forget we started with AJ, didn't we? Yeah.
yeah. You see how you love always
Mm.
jam down. I'm gonna blame you. He does it more now that you seem to love it in the comments. Always interrupting me. Right. Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder versus Joseph Parker. I'm not gonna say his actual Samoan name because I don't want to butcher it. But yes, with this fight, look, I mean, I called it from the start. Although I did think he was actually gonna get the KO, and I predicted KO in the ninth, and we saw what happened in the eighth round. Initially, I was a bit concerned that Parker was all the way out. He was like when he was outside of range, he was all the way outside range, but he was inching himself closer. But to me, he wasn't getting closer quick enough. So I thought if Wilder starts trying to maybe touch with that jab and just sort of find that range, he's gonna try and shoot that right hand. But I was always confident that Wilder wouldn't be able to beat Parker for the simple fact of to knock Parker out, you're gonna have to systematically brutalize him and beat him down the same way that Joe Joyce did. Um, Even just having that being able to rough him up doesn't work because Dillian White tried that. Dillian White dropped him officially once, well, officially twice, but like actually one time with the left hook. But he got straight back up off the left hook with no adverse effect to it. So he can take a shot. And even I've said it before, even in the Joe Joyce fight, he got up at the 10 count. It's just that in the UK, we've heard the ruling that if you're not up on your feet by the count of 8 and ready to go, then the referee will wave it off. In some places, they're more lenient, but Parker managed to get up there. So I was always confident, even if he takes one right hand, he'll be able to shake that off because Deontay Wilder's not going to be able to brutalize him and beat him down. That's not his style. But ultimately, when we go into the fight, um, the first thing that he did was to basically hold center ring and to make sure that he just made sure that he stuck to the pocket. He just stuck in the pocket and he would use his height difference as the advantage because Wilder isn't used to shooting the right hand down to such a low trajectory that often, unless someone is squared up stationary in front of him. So every time Parker's there and he's collapsing the pocket and he's able to sort of get underneath, Wilder had no answers for it. But he's holding center ring, making Deontay have to move. Bearing in mind, I've always said Deontay Wilder doesn't have the greatest of gas tanks. So by him doing all of that, you notice he's not going to move and punch at the same time because if he does both, the engine's going to deplete. If he does one at a time, he can manage his reserves. And that's how he's pretty much been since like 2015, 2016 times. Maybe 20, actually, no, I'd say 2018 is when the work rate started decreasing and it was all about, I'm going to be very conservative, but I'm just going to go for and shoot that right hand. And in that moment, I feel like Parker obviously he was winning the round, he was outboxing him, he was out hustling him, and I always knew that when it comes to someone who's actually got the power as well, or has got enough power and has got the boxing skills and abilities to trouble Wilder, he's gonna be like a fish out of water. He's gonna be out of sorts, and ultimately that's what we saw. Now the eighth round, I'll commend him because he done quite well to get through that. That first punch really should have taken him out, but it wobbled him badly. You saw he was stunned to the point where he didn't even really realize kind of what was happening at that moment. But he got lucky because Joseph Parker smartly was he kept his head down to make sure that his chin was tucked and his head was going in more like a triceratops, just to make sure that he doesn't, that you can't get to his chin and wobble him that way. But he was winging the shots over from over the top, which allowed um which was obviously allowing Deontay Wilder to then be able to lean back when he's on the ropes and to lean away from some of the shots. So even though he was catching a lot of them was catching him, he was able to ride them a little bit. And also he was doing his best to he was doing his best Tyson Fury impersonation by trying to lean over. He was sort of trying to lean over him and trying to tire him out that way, but it didn't quite work in the same way. Um, but with that being said, uh, yeah, he survived the rounds. Ultimately, he came through that run. He had another sort of mini one, I think, that took place in the 11th, and there was a few other times where he got caught with some big shots. But he basically was in there in survival mode for a little bit of the time. He started also throwing some hammer fists, which the referee didn't even admonish him about, and he did it on several occasions. He was headlocking Parker and punching him in the headlock as well. All of these just these weird like scared tactics, and it was like wild that he was getting away with it. But yeah, I guess they was hoping that he would come through the crisis. But by that point in time, you know, he was just so far down on the cards. There was no adjustment. There was, you know, there was nothing for him to ultimately get through. He didn't have the answers to sort of go through the motions, and boom, yeah, that was pretty much what happened there. And he lost a very, very wide points decision, 120 to 107 on one of the cards, and then 118 to 118 to 111 on two of them. And I don't know what two rounds they gave him, but I would like to know, because I didn't there was no round that I could give him. I didn't see him win anything in that fight personally. But yeah, you can go and then we can talk about how washed or not he actually is.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much more for me to say. I mean, you've pretty much nailed it there. You know, the question that has been put in the chat that I want to address is, what the hell has Malik Scott been doing? You know, it's clear that Deontay Wilder does what Deontay Wilder wants to do. From listening to the comments of Malik Scott, both at this and previous encounters with the public, you know, it's the Deontay Wilder show, and I'm just here for the ride. You know, look, Deontay Wilder's got his best friend or one of his good friends from young in his corner, and he's a yes man, because this performance of Deontay Wilder is quite simply the worst boxing I have ever seen at heavyweight level. And considering that this guy was once a world champion, this, you know, I struggle to find another performance where a boxer goes in a ring and relinquishes a fight so easily, so mildly, so tepidly, you know, throwing illegal punches, wrestling in the ring. You know, if you think that, you know what, Deontay Wilder has got this great right hand, then the one thing as a trainer you have to do is create a delivery system. That's all you got to do. You know, I saw Andre Jarrell put a beautiful piece. He was saying, you know, what the hell is Malik Scott doing? You know, because what is this guy doing in the ring? He can't box. You just have to take the fact that he's a puncher, and you have to find a way for him to get the punch off. There's no point in trying to turn him into some kind of stylist. He ain't gonna be that guy. He's not gonna dance around. You know, look, Tommy Hearns was that guy, the long, lanky guy. Tyson Fury's that guy, the long, lanky guy, jits up on his toes and he jab. Deontay Wilder has never been that guy, never will be. He's a knockout artist, plain and simple. So the one thing I have to do as a trainer is work out a delivery system that allows that killer of a right hand to deliver itself to its target precisely. That's all I need to do. Set that shot up. Movement, angles, preemptive strikes, feints, jabs. That's what I'm talking about, preemptive strikes. Because those shots, those feints will set you up. That delivery system is there. And at no point in this fight did I see anything that resembled something like a delivery system. In previous fights, we've seen Deontay Wilder with the straight left right. You know, I most notably the Bermain Steven knockout. I just think, wow, that delivery system is awesome. That straight left right at that time was something to behold. Now, I don't know about you guys, but he says that this new drug that he's smoking has made him very relaxed. I don't know the name of it. It starts with an A. And I'm sure
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca. There you go. I know nothing about these things. I choose not to. But whatever that is, he's gone from being this knockout KO artist to being this lackadaisical float around the ring and not know what the hell I'm doing artist. And if ayahuasca has anything to do with it, that boy better stop smoking. He best, like, you know, he best get himself down to a gym in Philly and find Apollo Creed, because the old Wilder is not there. He's nothing like his old self. And what we saw Saturday night was tepid, bruv. It was horrible. So congratulations to Joseph Parker. He did what he had to do. He was very careful about doing the work that he did. But essentially, easy fight for him. This was an easy fight. You know, he had far more trouble with Joe Joyce. He had far more trouble against Anthony Joshua, far more trouble against Dillian White. You know, this was an easy fight. And he came out of there looking like fresher roses. You know, no facial damage. Just, yeah, I'm like, wow, really? That was easier than I thought.
Yeah, so pretty much that's that. I mean, no idea where he goes from here, but all I know is one win since 2019 doesn't look good. And yeah, whatever happens moving forward. One thing, and I'll say, even though I've given him all kinds of stick, and I'm sure I will end up giving him more because he's still saying stupid shit after the fact, but he is a perennial overachiever, and I will give him a lot of respect for that, because he never should have been anywhere near world titles, and he managed to win one and defend it numerous times, even though, you know, obviously the opponents were handpicked for the most part. But again, overachiever. Congratulations, but it looks like the curtain is drawn, and I'm not sure what else moving forward. If anyone heard the interview he done with 78 Sports afterwards, you can't really have any grace for him. It's very hard to do. Again, he's very humble when he's in front of people. Behind the back, it's more of that shit talking and everything else. So I can't trust characters like that, to be fair. But this isn't about whether I like him as a person or a character. This is about his boxing skills. They're severely lacking. They have done for a while, but he did have the delivery system up until the point he got rid of Mark Breland. And now we actually see how much Mark Breland done for him in his career. And hopefully, if he's, you know, sensible or smart enough, he will maybe reflect on that and realize exactly, you know, how much Mark Breland done, and at least try and reconcile those old issues that they had. That would be a nice way to go out. Now, that's. Did you want to say anything?
Nope, that's cool by
Oh,
me.
oh, right. Okay. So now we've got two other fights to talk about, which both took place earlier on today. We'll kind of go through these a little bit quicker. The first fight. Now I cannot. The first fight was Tsutsumi versus Anaguchi, which was the chief support of the Inoue versus Tapales fight. Now, Tony, I was half asleep when this was on. I only just recently watched it back, literally a couple minutes before the fight, before the show started. So I'm gonna let you go because you was more invested in the card.
I got to be honest with you, bro. I was out like a light after a heavy Christmas night and Boxing morning. I didn't watch the fight. I got up just in time to see the main event, so I cannot comment on this one other than knowing what I heard from Danny Fight Fan in his watch along about that being one hell of a fight with knockdowns galore.
And you chose not to rewatch it afterwards. That's poor from you.
I couldn't actually find it. Is the honest truth.
You should have hit me up, man. I've always got a link to the fights. But all right,
Yeah,
cool.
sorry,
So
bro.
I watched it. I watched it literally 2 minutes before.
I was hoping TNT would have it on replay, but yeah, or was it
No,
Sky Sports?
it was on Sky Sports. Yeah,
it was on Sky Sports. Yeah, but you know, this is what I hate about Sky Sports. You know, they have this big fight and then they go, no, we're not going to show a replay. I'm like, what the hell?
All right, cool. Well, look, with this fight, it's weird. I was trying to score. I wasn't scoring it, but I was trying to score it, if that makes sense. And the first 3 to 4 rounds, I had Anaguchi pretty winning pretty handily, like behind, just behind boxing. He was beating Tsutsumi to the punch. He was beating him to the jab. Tsutsumi was definitely just trying to be more of the rough and tumble guy within the fight. You had Anaguchi, they one moment they was exchanging a big flurry. I think it was in the third round, and you could tell that maybe Tsutsumi had a little bit more of the actual power of the two of them. And when that basically took place, you thought to yourself, "Oh, okay, well, he's getting hit clean, so there's a big possibility here that he can end up getting caught and getting sort of wobbled." But to be fair to him, apart from a really sort of it was a nasty looking cut over his eyebrow, but it never actually bled much, which was lucky for him. So even though the ref kept stopping the fight for the doctor to take a look at it, he was fine. They let him go out. But then what he started doing, he started basically stepping on the pressure, stepping on the gas towards Anaguchi, and rather than sort of boxing on the back foot like he was doing, he decided to start trying to fight fire with fire in the middle of the ring. And that is ultimately what then led to his downfall, because he started getting caught with shots. Um, the first knockdown was sort of a legit, it was like just a counter shot that sort of came over the top, and he dropped on that one. The second one to me looked a bit more like a slip, but that happened like 2 fights later. But I mean 2 rounds later, sorry. But in those rounds, and it's weird because there was 4 knockdowns, but in 2 of the knockdowns, Anaguchi was heavily winning those rounds. So you could have quite easily have said that instead of 10-8s, they were 10-9 rounds instead. Um, but it was a basically it just ended up being this big scrap in the middle of the ring from sort of round 6, round 7 onwards. And then it was just a war of attrition. In the ninth round, Anaguchi gets caught with it looked like it was a counter right hook, but they was both in a southpaw stance. It was a counter right hook. He starts wobbling, and Tsutsumi goes in trying to close the show, but he's managing to sort of dip under some shots, flurry the shots, and get round some. But Tsusumi's still swinging, he's still swinging, and then it looks like Anaguchi actually trips over his foot. No punches at that point had landed, but because there was initial punches beforehand, it was counted as another shot. So he ended up going down for the third time. Then finally, in the 10th round, both of them were basically both was extremely tired. But Anaguchi looked like he was half out on his feet at this point. And at that moment, you saw Tsutsumi basically he just started to press the gas. They're both still swinging like continuously for the next like minute and a half, but Tsusumi's just having a much better version of the fight than Anaguchi's having. And then lo and behold, right again at the very last seconds, about 6 or 7 seconds to go of the round, boom, he's down again in the 10th. He still gets straight back up, but at that point, any hope of him potentially winning the fight or getting a decision on the cards is well and truly gone. I think I had it sitting around about 5 rounds to 5 or 6 rounds to 4, but after those 4 knockdowns, it became very skewed, even though 2 of them I would have only given as 10-9 rounds. But yeah, it was a very, very good fight, and it was definitely one of those fight of the year contenders. Um, I wouldn't have it that high up, maybe, but it was. If you had a top 10, I think it could have get in the top 10, but it's just not in the top 5 for me. Since you didn't watch it, that's fine. Let's move on to the main
Okay, so
event.
just before you do move on, I just want to say prayers up for Anaguchi, because he is currently in hospital. He did have convulsions following the fight, so he is currently in hospital.
I did hear about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Actually, I remember Chris Andre saying, I didn't realize that was the fight he was referring to, but it makes sense. Even though he
yeah.
didn't take as much facial or physical damage, he took more internal, and I guess that's why also when it comes to the Bam and the Sonny Edwards fight, one of the first things I said was, even though Sonny looked like he was marking up a lot more, that didn't mean that he was losing certain rounds. And that's kind of how attribute it to this, because Tsutsumi looked, his face, like his eyes were lumped up, swollen. He had a big, massive cut over it. He looked a lot more physically beat up than Anaguchi did, but clearly Anaguchi suffered the heavier damage, and that's obviously what we have to kind of look at. But yeah, prayers to him. Hopefully he'll get up and he'll make a steady and swift recovery. But we'll yeah, I guess we'll keep an eye on that, and maybe on another show we'll report back.
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
Right, so that leaves us down to our last fight of the night, which was the fight for the undisputed championship between Naoya Inoue and Marlon Tapales. So both unbeaten fighters coming into this fight. Marlon Tapales
Tapales wasn't unbeaten. He's 37-3.
My bad. Okay. So here we go. This fight was very much a very highly touted sort of fight for the purist. Two very good fighters. Southpaw versus Orthodox. The Southpaw Tapales against the Orthodox Inoue. And what a fight it was. It was you know, a battle of will. You know, very good boxing on the part of both fighters. You know, they both had to ride through storms. They both came out looking to establish themselves. Again, you know, as you would expect with a fight of this pedigree, you know, Inoue comes out and he's throwing his jab to try and establish himself as the dominant force in this fight from the get-go. Tapales, though, is answering with his own very powerful shots, and this starts from literally round one. You know, sometimes you have a feel-out process, but these two guys literally were able to start, you know, moving into distance and creating opportunities on the back of good approach work. You know, everything I said that Deontay Wilder doesn't do, both these guys have got. You know, they were delivering their hard shots using good distance controllers, you know, using their jab to effect, using uppercuts and long range shots to move themselves into a position where they could, just launch their vicious right hand or left hand for the southpaw into body and head. But yeah, you know, this was an interesting fight. We did a watch along on Fight Fan Danny's TV channel, and I was told off for saying that I thought that Inoue had this in total control and he was totally dominant. I didn't give Marlon Tapales much of the action until late into the fight. I thought that Inoue was in control most of the early rounds and through the mid rounds. I thought that Inoue was able to, you know, look, there's no doubt that Tapales had moments in rounds where he looked fantastic. You know, he was able to hit Inoue with fantastic combinations. He was using that great, counter left straight into the face of Inoue. He was doubling up on that. He was throwing great uppercuts as well, which were hurting Inoue. But as I said, for me, thought that Inoue just thought, you know what? I'm just in a hard fight and I'm going to give as much as I'm going to take. And through each round, I saw Inoue with enough of the give to be able to win most of the rounds. I know Danny and Base gave Tapales more rounds than I did, but I certainly thought Inoue was boxing extremely well. It looks like he just goes from one fight to the next, and he doesn't look any different. He just looks so superlative in the way he approaches his work, in the way he delivers his punches, in the way he rolls punches. He does certain things in fights. You know, the way he's very much on his tippy toes, in and out. You know, very like Cuban boxing style. You know, in, out, in. It's you know, it's cat and mouse with him. But when he steps in, you know it. You definitely know it. And I might be blinded by the fact that when I see Inoue step in and launch some of these big blistering punches, I might be biased in some rounds by the fact that I see those and go, wow. And more often than not in rounds, I'm looking at Inoue launching and hitting Tapales with powerful combination punches more than Tapales does. Even in the rounds where even if you said Tapales won that round, Inoue was still throwing punches and was still able to hit Tapales with very good hard punches on the inside, which is, you know, a testament to his capability. But to me, I look at the fight and the way the trajectory of the fight goes, and to me, if even he loses rounds, he does enough work to make you go, he's chipping away. He's chipping away. You know, there's bits in rounds where he's going, I'm going to go all out and go for the knockout. But when I don't get it after 15, 20 seconds, back out. Conserve the engine. But just keep chipping away. He's so good at that. You know, he does never rush his way. He doesn't expend too much energy trying to get you out. He's like, you know what? I'm going to give you this now. 20 seconds. Bam, bam. Get you on the road. Bam, 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 bam. Uppercuts, hooks. Burying great shots. Leverage with, you know, the knees bent. Getting all those shots in. And there's no doubt. Lee, I know you're in the chat. We're definitely going to be watching this fight when we're back at the gym in the new year. Because this guy is a technician of the highest order. And he boxes beautifully. So any of my boys watching this show tonight or in the future, go and watch Inoue versus Marlon Tapales. Great boxing action. And as I said, you know, I thought that, you know, Inoue was just gaining the ascendancy, breaking down Tapales. And obviously he gets the knockdown in, what is it, the 5th round? Help me, Base. 4th round. And it's that point, you know I can hurt you. But look at how clever this guy is. You know, he goes for the kill, but then when he realizes, nope, I'm going to take a step back, and he gets back to that boxing. Chip away. You don't have to go for it all the time. And he does this amazing job of gauging when to go, when to retreat. You know, there are points in time, as I said, Tapales gets on top of Inoue and he starts banging away at Inoue. But even in those exchanges, Inoue is clever enough to cover up, take the shots. You know, some of them he rides through them because they catch him clean, but he's able to ride through those shots, reset himself, get back into position and start off his offense again. And he does that with such great aplomb. Every time I've ever seen it, it's the one thing that I say he's so good at is setting himself up for attacks and then setting himself up to defend. You know, he's a guy that, you know, look, he isn't the hardest to hit. You know, in every fight, somebody will always catch him. You will catch him. But what that shows is he's willing to take one to give one. You know, this is something that a lot of fighters like AJ, you know, they're not willing to do that. You know, whereas Inoue, he's willing to go into your kill zone and stand there and go and hit me. Because the minute you drop that hand, I'm going to bang you with something. And that was the point in I think it was round 9 where I said on the stream that I thought this fight is being dominated by Inoue, because essentially at that point in about round 9, he basically said, that's it. I'm not backing out anymore. I'm not using distance anymore. I'm going to stand right in front of you. You can throw your haymakers, but you're going to get bigger haymakers coming back. And he just basically stood there and he rolled shots when he needed to, but he was delivering beautiful combinations. And it was just a matter of time. And lo and behold, in time, he was able to dispatch of Marlon Tapales with a beautiful right cross straight through his guard, hit him. I wasn't sure at the time that it was powerful enough to keep him down, but you could see Tapales tried his best to get up. He was on all haunches, and he was unable to get himself off the floor before the 10 count, and the fight was over. Masterful performance by Naoya Inoue. You know, guys, if you haven't seen the fight, go watch it. It's another masterclass. Over to you, Base.
Well, I'm not gonna add too much additional to that. I mean, yeah, I gave Tapales 2 rounds. I gave him the fifth and I gave him the seventh, and I was actually giving him the fourth until he got knocked down. So at that point, I felt like because he had started to make an adjustment in the ring, from the high guard to more of the shell guard, which was protecting him better from the right hand of Inoue. Um, and as he started to do that, the one disadvantage he had was being the southpaw, but the shorter southpaw. So he wasn't able to go over the top of Inoue's jab, and he wasn't able to affect the lead foot positioning, because he had his lead foot very turned very angular inwards, so that he could try and generate more power from it. But Inoue's was more sort of front facing, which meant he was able to shift and move his feet quicker. And one of the issues that Marlon Tapales had as to why he ended up sort of getting caught with several shots, especially in those earlier rounds before he made that slight adjustment, is because he was using a very low and anchored stance so that he could attempt to almost explode out and put more body weight behind his shots, knowing that he wasn't the bigger puncher of the two. But what that basically meant is that that held him captive when Inoue then started to pivot and spin around the target, or to when he was trying to find angles. It was very hard for Inoue for Tapales to move out of the way. So rather than move his legs, at that point he was starting to use his upper body movement, and he was trying to use more sort of lateral body movement to sort of ride and roll some of the punches. But as you're right, Inoue, he started throwing heavy shots from that first round just to test to see what kind of resistance Tapales had. And when he realized that the resistance was sufficient and the guard was pretty good, he would still throw the heavy shots, but he stopped throwing them at the same regularity. He started more just trying to he was trying to snap shots out to see if he could find ways to open the guard for the entry for the shots to come through. And he was doing that pretty masterfully through those first 3 rounds. As I said, the fourth round he started to hold his feet a bit more, and that was giving Tapales more room to sort of get off his body work that he was started investing in from round one. And as I said, in that fourth round, I was actually giving him the better of the exchanges. He was doing better work, but he just ended up getting caught over the top with I think it was an overhand left that caught him. And then ultimately he backed up onto the ropes, got hit with a flurry, and took a knee, went down, but then got back up right at the end of the round. And that was sort of where he said, okay, but he actually then came in. I think maybe I knew it for, okay, he's not quite done yet. I need a bit of a break. So I'm still going to try and work. But that's when Tapales started having more success in the fifth. And he even had a lot of success in the sixth. But I swung that one to Inoue, but I know some other people had it the other way, gave Inoue the fifth and gave him the sixth instead. But yeah, overall, Inoue just steadily broke him down. But that shell guard was really working for him. And then inexplicably, he went back from the shell guard back to the high guard, which meant that he was unable to see certain shots, and it also made the straight rights have a better target to reach, because this hand isn't now blocking the trajectory of those shots. So he threw one, which Tapales managed to get his hands up for in the 10th, and then ultimately threw but when that one there, the guard wasn't back closed like it should have been. So as he's coming forward, he manages to go through it. And even though he still connects with the glove, enough of it hits on the temple to scramble the senses. That was all she wrote. And Naoya Inoue is a 2-weight undisputed champion in 12 months and 2 weeks, which is unheard of. Unheard of in the males. I'd have to check to see if maybe Clarissa managed to do it in the female game. But yeah, ultimately, first guy to go back to back undisputed so quickly. Generational talent, special fighter. Still got a good lot of prime left in him, and he said he's going to stick around at 122 for a bit. So I think he's looking to fight Lewis Neary in April or May time. After that, MJ Akhmadaliev is the next mandatory in the queue. I think Sam Goodman's also in the queue. So he's got a good amount of challengers that he can fight moving forward. Before you say anything, Tony, big ups to G Chain, who's dropped a big super chat for us. If I can get it to show on the screen, hold on. Right. So he says, big up my bros, Tony, Base, and Danny for their work on the breakdown this year. Wishing you guys and all the regulars in the chat every week a healthy and happy 2024. Bless up. Thank you very much. Big 49.99. That will go well to helping the channel. I'm not sure if we won't see any of that, but it's all works for the channel. It's all in to make everything at Undefeated bigger and better. So we truly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm on a live. Next time I'm on a live, just make sure you're there, innit?
So I just wanted to add a point that I had made to commentary by Joe Habib and Eric Lauder on their ringside reporter show, was they were saying that the left foot outside the right foot when you have a southpaw facing an orthodox is an overrated concept, and it really doesn't need to be given any credence, because a fabled trainer, I can't remember the one that they named, had said that it doesn't really matter whether your foot's on the inside or the outside. To which I said, you clearly have not boxed, because it makes a massive difference where your foot placement is, especially when you're fighting southpaw versus orthodox. Now, if you don't understand that, you need to go in the ring and start doing some rounds, because it's huge. It's huge. It's literally, I think they were using AJ as an example of a southpaw against an orthodox. And I was saying, well, you can't use that example because those guys don't use footwork. But where it works, where you see it working, is when you're looking at guys who have got elite footwork. Lomachenko, Bam Rodriguez, Devin Haney, Inoue. Look at their footwork, and again, I looked at this fight and I'm looking at the footwork, and my God, it makes a difference. There are things that you see in the fight where a guy goes, watch me move this foot here, and I'm going to now be in a position where he cannot throw a punch, and I can deliver my telling backhand straight into his face. It's so important. As Fight Fan Danny reiterates, foot placement is massive. And for anyone to think it's not important, you just don't know boxing, bro. Because it literally, I'm watching these guys, some of these elite fighters, and the guys at the very best know where to put their feet. And it's not to say your foot always has to be on the outside if you want to be in the ascendancy. But you have to know where your foot is dominates where your punches are going to go and how they're thrown, which punches are going to be thrown, So, yeah, that was my rant at them two guys. What you were talking about. Sorry, guys, but...
That's fair. I mean, the only time you can say it doesn't matter is if your orthodox guy is a left hooker as opposed to having a straight right. Then his foot can be on the inside, but you don't do that often, because you still, if you're on the inside, then ultimately your trajectory and your line of sight is skewed away from where the opponent is. If you're a hooker, it's fine, because ultimately then you bring the hook into the trajectory. But if you're trying to throw straight shots and your foot's on the inside, more times than not, it's gonna miss. I'm not a boxer, and I know that. So yeah, I don't know where they got that from, but I mean, although to be fair, they just like recite it from someone else. It's not like they necessarily said that was their take, right?
That's exactly what Joe Habib did. He recited somebody else's words, and then he tried to convince the audience that 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 thought process, that mindset is absolutely right. You don't need to have the footwork. And it was like, no, you're wrong. You do need to understand footwork. You do need to understand foot placement. And as you know, a couple other guys have mentioned, you know, other guys with absolutely superlative footwork: Shakur Stevenson, Miguel Cotto, and Nonito Donaire.
Fair dues. All right, so let's unless you want to sort of get to any messages in the chat real quick, we can wrap it up. It's we came in the hour early just to make sure that we could leave at a decent time tonight for everyone. If you've got any chats you wanna bring up, feel free. If not, we can run the banners and we can let everyone know what we're doing for the rest of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just the sporty sport comments about Neri being dangerous, and you know, obviously Inoue will have to be careful. He will be, you know, in against another southpaw. If he goes in against MJ Akhmadaliev, that will also be. Oops, sorry, should I go back?
No. I was gonna say, with regards to Lewis Neri, the one thing, sporty sport, you're right. He has more power than Fulton and Tapales, but he also came up from the lower weights. So I don't think Inoue is gonna worry about the power so much. And Neri is very hittable. He's a lot more hittable than Tapales and Fulton. So if Inoue's power connects, he will not take it. Remember the same way he didn't take it from Brandon Figueroa. That's what I would say with regards to that.
Any comment about MJ?
MJ is going. That will be a much harder fight because MJ is a much bigger guy. He has power. He's got ring craft. He's got a beard on him, and he seems to be able to take body shots well, and he moves well. That's going to be a very tactical battle.
I think MJ. I mean, I was looking at MJ. Was it last week he fought?
Yeah.
He doesn't. I mean, not that he had to use it, but he doesn't use a great deal of footwork. He generally tends to just walk and stand in front of you and just bang you the hell out.
Look at some of his older fights. He's got more footwork than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern because recently I'm just, you know, you're probably right in terms of he's got better footwork, but recently, especially last week, I noticed, you know, and it is a case of sometimes you don't need to use your footwork the way it needs to do. You can sometimes just say, you know what, I can stand in front of this guy because these punches are not going to be effective against me, and therefore I can be a pressure fighter and just beat the hell out of someone. A guy that has that is light welterweight.
Champion. Prograde. Matias.
Subrius Matias. You know, a guy that uses so little footwork. He literally just stands up and goes, I'm gonna stand and walk in front of you and bang you the hell out. So yeah, that'll be an interesting thing.
Cool. Well, look, Tony, give me your socials.
So guys, you can catch me on Instagram and Twitter on Pugilistboy, but I am on Twitter and or X as it's now called, and YouTube as Pugilistboy. But on Instagram, where I do most of my content, you'll find me under Pugilistic Boy. All right, lovely. There it is.
And for me, it's BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual. Tomorrow will be the start of my year-end awards. Tomorrow will be the male and female performance of the year awards. I'm not going to do all the same ones I've done last year, but yeah, that's tomorrow. Then Friday is going to be my male and female fighter of the year. Saturday is going to be fight of the year, and then Sunday is going to be KO of the year. So it's on New Year's Eve. So look out for those, and I might do some shorts just giving the others like promoter and all that stuff, little 10 seconds here or there. So BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual. If you're not already signed up to mine and subscribed to mine, please do so, or at least just check the videos. If you like them, then subscribe. If not, feel free to not do so. But I appreciate anyway. On X, B_A_S_E, but you can just type in BaseDaKID and I do show up straight away. So I must be doing something right. Also, BaseDaKID on Instagram. I don't put anything on there in regards to boxing as such, but I might start doing some live streams that might end up going there soon. So look out for all of that. But yeah, thank you very much.
Did you mention your collaboration show on New Year's Eve?
I didn't. No. Okay, guys. Both myself, Danny, Maestro, and apparently someone else who I'm not going to mention this in case they don't show up. But yeah, apparently there's a bunch of us going to be doing a weekend or a New Year's review. I don't know what the topics are. I don't know where it's going to go. This is totally October's thing, but October Red Boxing on YouTube. Make sure you guys log into there. It's if you go onto my channel, go into my community page, there's a post already up for it. So yeah, everyone sort of jump through and jump onto that as well. It should be good fun. And yeah, if other quote unquote guests do show up, it might be very interesting. But with that being said, we'll wait and see what happens moving forward. But yeah, otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is probably the last show for a couple of weeks. But we'll obviously let you know when the next one does happen and come back on. Is it October Red Media on YouTube now? Okay, so October Red Media. There you guys go. But yeah, big ups to all and have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the week and Happy New Year to those who I don't speak to. Looking forward.
Take care, guys.